And we are live in. I think we're. I think we are live now. Yes. So
All
how's it
right.
going?
Good, good. How yourself, Oliver? How you been?
It's been a nice day here,
All right.
but yeah. So
Happy
you were
420.
just happy 420, man. Just before we were going live, you were showing some lamps there. Really cool lamps. What kind of lamps you got there?
Yeah. So I'm currently a lighting engineer.
Oh, dude, I think your picture froze for a moment. Ah, I think you're back now.
And, and
No,
uh, so we're trying out, I get a lot of prototype.
dude. Your I think your Wi-Fi is freezing or something. Do you have better Wi-Fi there?
I have, let me see. I've got, yeah, I got two bars. Let me open the door. Hold on a second. You know what I could do? I can do a walking. Yeah, let's just do a
Yeah,
walking.
yeah, that's great. That's great.
There you go, a little better.
So you're a lighting engineer right now.
Yeah, I'm a lighting engineer. If I can show you around real quick here. So I'm working on a few prototypes. This is an 860 watt. How am I going to do this here? 860 watt single light right there. And then I've got some panel lighting. This is for multi-tier cultivation. I don't know if you can see that. There's one right here. They
Right,
fold up. These fold for shipping purposes.
right.
Yeah. And these ones I've already put together. This is another one. And I have one here that I just put together this morning. These are 600 watts, 730 watts, and then 830 watts. And of course, in the office here, you saw my the one I'm using as a light because I don't have any fixtures up here yet. So I have to use this LED here as the source against the wall, though, of course. And I got a few other. The future for panels. The future is going to be like this. It's going to be panels for multi-tier cultivation. So they're just straight up panels. I don't know. You can zoom in. You can kind of see the diodes.
How many watts does it draw?
This guy is going to be 720 watts,
Is
which will be equivalent to a 1,000 watt HPS in our day.
that's
Because they're
quite a
LED,
lot.
yeah. In Europe, is most of the Europeans grow with 600 watts. That was the
Right,
standard. And
right.
Americans grew with 1,000 watts. That was the standard. But these LEDs are about 20% more effective than a traditional HPS. So an 800 watt LED would be equivalent to a 1,000 watt HPS.
Do you also do like PPF measurements there?
Yeah. So I have my sensors in my office, not this office. I have three offices. I have one, two, and three
Right.
right there. And but I have my main office with all my phones and everything. It's next door. And I just walked over here because I wanted it to be a little more quiet and a little more private for our conversation. But I think now with the door open, yeah, we still have three bars.
Yeah, it seems to be working.
Yeah, it seems to we lost.
Nah.
No,
For a
I still
moment it
have,
froze, but it's
yeah,
fine now.
I
It's
got
fine
three
now.
bars. We're good.
Right,
We stay
right.
here then. All right. How's the weather
So
over there in Estonia?
really good. Today was like 15 degrees Celsius, which was really nice.
Oh wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, you in Tartu or you in Tallinna?
I'm in my country home right now, which is in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Estonia, pretty much. But
Where exactly is it? What's it called?
there, I think the closest place is like Caru, and but I'm far away from that, like near a forest. So it's a really
Okay.
nice place. But it's an old 90-year-old log house that I'm trying to renovate slowly.
Oh wow.
You
Okay.
should come and visit someday. I think
I would
you'd like
love
it.
to. I've stayed in Lasnamäe. I've stayed in Tartu. I've stayed in Campi. I've stayed in not too far from Tartu. I stayed with a friend of mine there at his mom's place. That was beautiful there too. I love Estonia absolutely.
What's your connection to Estonia?
Ah, my children, my firstborns, are Finnish. their mom is Finnish. So I would always in the 90s I would go to Helsinki, and then I always crossed to Tallinna. I always thought the Estonians were a little cooler. Uh, they're a little more a younger crowd, than the Finnish. Um, they even dress differently. The girls dress like with mini skirts, and in Finland nobody dresses with mini skirts. Everyone dresses in pants. But the Estonian girls always had these little sexy mini skirts, and I always thought that Estonia was a little more progressive because it's basically mainland, continental Europe.
Right.
Um, I love it. There's so many similarities. So I saw the instant brotherhood since the 90s. So in fact, I've actually stayed in Estonia and taken the cruise to spend the day in Helsinki, rather than being opposite, rather than staying in Helsinki to go see my kids in Espoo or in Helsinki. I'd rather take the 2 hour cruise. so it was just funner, And of course, that everybody who comes to Estonia, they all come back with beer, right to Finland, right? So that's yeah. So now, to me, there's sister cities, both Estonia, both Tallinna and Helsinki for me are sister cities. That's what. It took me a long time to realize, though, that the language barrier was only about 25% is shared common, even though it sounds a lot
It
alike.
sounds similar, yeah.
It sounds similar. I think that the Finnish is a little slower. It's like almost like elongated,
Right.
and then and the Estonian is quicker, yappity yap 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 yap, a little quicker, a little more faster beat.
The usual joke is that Finnish is like a drunken version of Estonian.
Oh, right. I've heard too that they're like the moose, right? You guys nicknamed them the moose. Yeah, I do. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to cover them real quickly. I don't know I don't know if you're going to be editing this or if it's going to just go as
We're
it is.
just gonna go live as it is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me give you a quick. And we are doing pretty good with bars and everything.
How
Let me
are
give
we
you
with time? Like, do you have enough time?
Yeah, I got 40 minutes.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I can probably tell you everything in 30 minutes. We can extend it if you have more questions, of course.
Right.
So the term 420.
Yes.
The term 420. Where did that come from? Okay, so I'm sure you've had. Do you have an idea more or less of where that term came from? What is your background on this?
Well, the legend I've heard is that this was the time, like 4:20 p.m., when high school kids went to smoke.
That's correct. So before you heard the truth, that is the truth, and I'll give you more
Okay.
details. But before you heard that truth, let me explain to you how it really happened. It actually started 9 years, 74, 75, 74. So, 14 years before I graduated. So only 14 years before, 14 generations of graduates when that term started. So I graduated in 1990 from high school, and that term existed around 1973, 74. And so how it all began, and it's weird because before you heard the truth, which is what you've heard, Albert. You used to hear other rumors.
Like what?
You used to hear that the 420 came from the number of chemicals found in cannabis and marijuana. So they'd be like, oh, it's a number of chemicals. It's a special code word. Also, I've heard another false rumor was that which has some truth to it because it at least identified the city where the term 420 came from. So the term 420 came from San Rafael, California, which is just one high school south of mine. So literally 10 kilometers. You were asking me yesterday how my environment created me, how I'm a product of my environment. What were the factors? Well, that's it. It's the factors is it's San Francisco. It's progressive San Francisco, and it's in the 90s. And so that's where the movement for legalization started. In fact, the first law was called the Compassionate Use Act of 1996. and it was written by several collaborators, one from my county, my little district, one from San Francisco, and one from Oakland. We had other people like Steve Cubby, Dennis Perone, a couple, Dale Geringer, a couple attorneys, but we're all from the Bay Area. So it's basically San Francisco. So San Francisco, so that's where the term 420 came from. It came from San Rafael, California. And the other rumor was that it was the police code for marijuana use in progress. Like when someone was smoking, they said that it was the code 420. Like we have a 420 in progress. Like if you saw somebody smoking, they would say, "Oh, we have a 420 in progress." That's also false. There's never been a police code for 420 on any police department in the entire Bay Area. For cannabis smoking in progress, that's never happened. I've heard, like you said, it was like a number of chemicals found in the herb, police codes. It turns out that it's still applied to me. I graduated in 1990. My school district, which is just one high school next to the San Rafael High School, also got out at 320. I clearly remember that. In fact, my primary school even got out, kindergarten through sixth grade, and then junior high, and then high school. High school would be grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. Mm-hmm. They all got out at 320. And so there was the name of the band. There was a 5 students that held music tryouts. They played together every after school, basically every day after school. They were called the Waldos, and there's a totem pole. So in front of the high school, the oldest proven scientific evidence of 420 being written down was on a totem pole. A totem pole. I don't even know what those are. They're like logs and tree trunks, and they're carvings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a pagan thing.
Exactly. It's a Native American. Native Americans make totem poles as markers.
Yes.
For territories and for religious purposes, etc. Well, there is a totem pole in front of the high school that had engraved 420 on it from 1976. I want to say 75, 74, 76. Those 3 years.
Oh wow! Does it still exist?
I believe it. Well, I did get the chance to see it. Remember, it's now 2022. You know what I mean?
Right.
But when even into the year 2000, no one was sure exactly where that term came from. We knew it was from California because that's where it sprung. That's where the first stickers were made. That's where people were saying, "Happy 420, happy 420." Oh, it's 420. Or they'll say it's 419. You got a minute? And so that's where the term would come from. But later on, Stephen Hager from High Times magazine. Stephen Hager got to the bottom of it. He actually flew out from New York. He used to be an editor-in-chief of High Times magazine, and he came out to California. He did some investigation. I remember 2 big pushes in California that used the term 420, and it was also used to entice people to vote for the law in 1996 in October. And the first push was in 1991. I remember the flyer because it even had like racial references as to why cannabis was illegal in America and how it was all wrong and everything. And I remember thinking, this is pretty racial, this is pretty racist. But I remember seeing that term officially accepted by like 1991 locally. Okay. In a local flyer that people, aficionados, cannabis aficionados were passing by. So that was 1991. Then I saw the big push in 1995 in the summer, all the way to the summer of 1996, which is when the law passed in October. So every pharmacy, every grocery store, like Lidl or whatever chains you have in Europe, every grocery store, every post office, everywhere, Costco's, Walmart's, there was a young person getting signatures for the law for 1996. So that's when everybody looked around and were like, wow, I think this is going to be legal. And sure enough, in late October, the law passed. It passed by 56%, 56.2% or something like that. So it passed, and but it took forever to implement. So that's where the term 420 came from. It came from the Waldos meeting. School gets off at 3:30, 3:20, and they would meet 1 hour after school at one of the four musicians' homes, and then they would play after school for an hour or two. And then they wrote it. Somebody actually marked it on the totem pole in San Rafael. So that's like the earliest evidence, and it's already proven. I collaborated on Facebook and a few forums. I testified, and I said, no, I can testify that totem pole did exist, that was the correct hour. That makes all complete sense. And I saw the flyers in '91. There were some flyers that were being passed around on 420. So I thought that was interesting. And sure, so it is from the Bay Area. So at the same time, so that takes care of the origins. Do you have any questions regarding the origins of 420, where it came from? Or
do you have any memorable times from that era when you were so close to the history where you really enjoyed some good weed?
Okay, so unfortunately, I didn't try cannabis until my 20s.
Really?
So, that's correct.
Wow.
So, and in fact, for a long time, I mean, I knew if you said marijuana, I kind of knew it was something people smoked. I knew it.
Okay.
If you said cannabis in the '90s for me, even when I would graduate from high school, I wouldn't associate it with marijuana. In fact, at one point, I thought cannabis was like something that you inject in your veins or something. So that's the way it was. It wasn't until 1996, which is the same year that the law passed. So it was in the fall. The law passed in October of 1996. It was called the Compassionate Use Act of 1996.
You were already involved before you first tried cannabis.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So remember, again, I'm a product of my environment. Remember,
okay.
So what happened was I was now in college. And one of the earliest founders, there were 4 clubs, which now this takes me now to away from the origins of 420 to now the movement, how it all started.
Right.
So the movement, you're gonna like this part. The movement actually started from the AIDS movement. Believe it or not. Yeah, I knew I'd see your eyebrows go light up. Yeah.
What?
So the author of the law, his name was Dennis Perron.
Okay.
His mother had AIDS. He had AIDS. I think maybe his boyfriend had AIDS. Big activist. You got to understand, in the 80s, AIDS was fatal. In fact, if you had AIDS, if you had HIV or AIDS up to 1992, summer of 1992, if you were diagnosed before that time, most likely you died. And if you got diagnosed after 1992, you might have lived. There was now medications and a few of the treatments that were helping. But remember Freddie Mercury died that year, so he didn't make it. He was right at the cut line where. So we were bearing. Listen to me. Because it came from the AIDS movement, we were burying people all through the late 80s and early 90s. We were burying. That's the first thing that happened. So take into consideration that environment. So that's why it was called the Compassionate Use Act, because it was one of the few substances that could help people as they were dying. It could help people sleep better. It could help people eat better, build up the appetite. It slowed down the wasting away. It slowed it down. It didn't cure AIDS, of course, but it provided relief for the disease. So that's one aspect that I need you to understand. That so it came. Dennis Perron was the activist, and he was basically just providing cannabis for AIDS patients and for terminally ill cancer patients too, as well. So it was like the end of life. It was like an end of life compassion medication, basically. So Dennis Perron started it. His club was in San Francisco, and it was actually operating clandestinely a little bit from 1990, 91, 92 up through 2004 and 2002 until he got raided by the federal government. So he was the first one to with or without a law, he was the first one to implement it. Dennis Perron. Across the bay, so this is San Francisco. By the way, his club was called the San Francisco Cannabis Buyers Club. San Francisco CBC, Cannabis Buyers Club.
Okay.
And you walked in, and to be able to be a member, you needed to be terminally ill, and you needed to be, have be part of the community, the AIDS community. And that's how it started. It started in San Francisco in the early 90s, and the law didn't kick in until 1996. At the same time, across the Bay Area, just across the bridge, 20-minute bridge.
But by the way, did they ever get raided or something? Did the
Yeah,
police
yeah.
shut it down?
Everybody got shut down at least once or twice before 2010. And
Okay.
2010 was when the federal government gave up, and when the state government gave up, and they just started accepting the law. So
Hmm.
imagine from 1996 to 2010, it's 14 years. So
Hmm.
it took 14 years of implementing the law. 14 years. So just because it became legal doesn't mean that I was able to sell or buy, or no. You still had to look over your shoulder. You still had to go like this. You still had to be. So it wasn't until it loosened up slowly. First what was happening was that people weren't going to jail, but they would still go to court. They still have to spend money on an attorney. And then later on, it wasn't like you weren't even getting arrested. Now there's the card. From 2006 to 2010, if you had a card, you were safe. You saw my card when I was in Estonia. I showed it to you. I showed it to you
Right.
guys when I was in Tartu, the university.
Right.
So you guys saw what they looked like. Once you had an official card, you were safe. But that card didn't come in until like 2006, 2007, 2008, 9, 10. So that was that.
So how did you get involved? Like
Okay.
originally?
So my environment.
Right.
I was a college student, and the owner of the third oldest club in the Bay Area in the country had poor eyesight. And
Okay.
so computers were just kicking in then. The internet was starting to take off in the mid 90s. And so he wanted to have all of his written hand letters typed. So he couldn't type because he couldn't see the monitor and he couldn't see his keyboard very well. So he was a hard time. So what he would do is he hired me to take his typewritten letters and digitize them, put them in Word,
Oh
Microsoft
wow.
Word. And so I'm sitting. So my first job was a secretarial job. You know what I mean? It was like, and and behind his house he had a greenhouse and he was growing plants. And I walked in, and I worked with him for like 2 months. Summer of '96. I worked with him for like 2 months. He was paying me like $10 a page, to type. So it's good
Oh.
money for a college
Yeah.
student. You do 8 pages, you got
Right.
$80.
Yeah.
So you
That's a
know
lot
what I
of
mean?
money.
I can type away. So I ended up going to his office and being with there. And then I would see people walk in and they buy cannabis and they walk away. And I was like, what is that? Was that marijuana? And he goes, yeah, it's cannabis. It's medicine. I'm like, what? I'm like, medicine? What? So I was completely clueless. In fact, at that time, I loved gardening, but I had never made a clone before in my life. Never made a clone.
Oh.
But I always used seeds. And I remember I went to the back and they were making clones. They were taking cuts from a mom, dipping them in a cloning solution, and then into a
Right.
sponge. And I was watching the procedure. They had a cute girl working for them at the time too. So I was kind of like, I got up from my desk just to go hang out with her. And I'm seeing the process. So I decided to make 5 for me. So just to see how it would work. So I took the clone. I copied the example. Boom, 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 and I put it away, and I completely forgot about it. I put it on a shelf underneath the light, like one of these lights, one of those little shop lights you see right here.
Hmm. Hey, your picture just froze. Ah, it's back. I think it's back.
I put it under that, and yeah, it's okay. I moved the laptop. A week later, yeah, we're back on. We're back on.
Yeah, we're back on.
And
Yeah.
a week later, I came back. I opened up the closet, and I had like roots coming out of my sponge, and a little
Mm.
clone and roots. I remember I was so happy. I was walking around like this, and I was showing everybody. I was like, "Look what I did! I got a plant. I made a plant." And I was from that moment on. It was just downhill. It was just so easy. I was fascinated. I was fascinated that it was illegal or gray zone.
Yeah.
I was fascinated that it was something that was changing the world. That it was so back to the origins of 420. So you have to understand the 420 was like the compassionate use act. So it was compassion,
Hmm.
and it was literally helping people. It It was to do two things: to decriminalize, so that people wouldn't go to jail and lose their whole, their livelihoods, and lose their possibility for employment, and destroy their future because of a cannabis, because of a joint, or they got busted in the street or whatever in their car, and you couldn't lose. Clinton in the 90s made it so that if you had a drug charge, you couldn't get student loan for money for student loans for money for schools. You couldn't do it.
Okay.
Bill Clinton did that in 98. So when the law passed, it was like, we didn't want people going to jail. We didn't want people to lose their livelihoods over a plant.
Right.
So that was in San Francisco, and then across, like I said, across the bay, just 20 minutes away, was the Oakland Cannabis Buyers Club. That was the second club that opened up. Then across the bay, another bridge. There's 5 bridges in the Bay Area. So across the other bridge is where I'm at. There was a reverend. Her name is Lynette Shaw, and she ran the club called the Marin Alliance for medical marijuana. Okay. And so she also had her group of people. So almost like in every county, there was one club that decided to step up the game and implement the law. Shortly thereafter, my boss opened one up 20 minutes away from Lynette Shaw's also, and it was called Genesis 1:29. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and you wanted to know what that verse says, and so I'll read it for you here. The verse says, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon all the face of the earth, and every tree, in which that the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it should be for food." So there's also Genesis 1:12, which is very similar. The Lord repeats himself there. So as you can see, it was mostly compassionate. Recreational use was completely out of scope. Although most of the activists over at that time believed that all cannabis use was medical use, because even if you weren't sick, you were expanding your mind, you were altering your consciousness, you were still learning something from the plant. It was still teaching you something about you. So even those high leaders believed that there was no recreational use other than medical, like even if you weren't sick. So those were the gung ho guys. So we were the 4th oldest club or 3rd oldest club, depending on how you look at it. By 2000,
what year was this?
1996, when the law passed in October, all the way through 2002. In 2002, all the clubs got shut down by the federal government, all of them. Why? And then it became a game. It was George Bush. It was George Bush Jr. 9/11 had happened a year before.
Okay.
So security was airplane security went super tight, as you know.
Right.
The country the ports were, for 6 months we were on high alerts for any kind of terrorist act. So in 2002, the country did swing to the right a little bit. In 2002, and then of course we did the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. And but as I said, the law started with the law was called, the title of the law was called Compassionate Use Act of 1996. And what made that law powerful, Elver, was that any kind of public initiative, any law that is derived or written by the people as a memorandum, and for you guys it'd be called memorandums.
You mean the public vote for like all the people?
Public initiatives, public laws.
We don't have that.
Oh, well, so you should have them. So
yes, we should have democracy. That's true.
So the senators can make laws, and congressmen or deputies can make laws.
Yeah.
So
but
together
the people can't here.
Okay, that shouldn't be the case. So if the people
if
the people think there should be a law prohibiting something or allowing something or making exceptions of something, the people should be able to come together and be like, hey, you know what? Our senators aren't listening to us, our governors aren't listening to us, our congressmen aren't listening to us.
There's the usual argument is that since we are living so close to Russia, then we can't have democracy, basically. Maybe they buy some legalization campaign that really, like for I don't know, heroin or something. But if
Yeah, that's
Moscow pays
crazy.
for that,
So in Mexico, it's like you guys. Mexico has the United States, a superpower next door, and you guys have the superpower next door. So I can see that. I can see how that can influence. I can see how that can influence politics. But no. So in California, it's called a memorandum, a referendum,
referendum. Yeah,
a
yeah,
public
yeah.
referendum,
And
and
and I remember that law specifically had a really nice wording to it, which allowed it to be expanded later.
yeah, I'll read that for you
Really,
in just a second. I'll read that for you in just a
yeah,
little
that's
second.
really clever.
It had like a little, it had a loophole,
Exactly.
an
Yeah.
an open door in the back.
To
um,
to the
yeah,
future.
but before I tell you that, so what made this law very powerful was, and why in California? Why wasn't it in New York, where there's also liberals there? Why wasn't it in Florida? What wasn't it? In California? The Constitution of the state does not allow the governor to veto a public initiative.
Oh,
So once you have a law that's written by the people and it gets passed, it gets voted into beyond 50%,
yeah.
the senators can't veto it, the congressmen can't veto it, and the governor, who has all the power to cancel, can't cancel it.
Even the president can't get involved or
No,
something.
the president is federal government.
Yeah, yeah. But even he,
On the
no,
federal
no,
government, on
nothing.
the nothing, he can make a call, he can make a phone
Wh-
call and
What
try
about the?
to.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court could get involved, or
Yeah, okay, so the Supreme Court gets involved in federal cases, okay, for
right.
things that will apply to the whole country, not in individual states. So the first dam that broke was California, because California was at odds. It was legal in California, but it was illegal federally. So now
Mm.
you have two opposing, but they couldn't do anything. The governor couldn't do anything other than cooperate with the feds, with the federal government, and the federal government couldn't do anything. They can't change a state law, you know. And this and the states couldn't do anything. The senators had their hands tied,
Mm.
et cetera. That's the one thing aspect that not a lot of people know. That Prop 215, it was called Prop 215, Proposition 215, which is the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, could not be vetoed. So now it was like a problem for legislators. Now the
Mm.
legislators had to create laws to define and to circumvent and to direct and to shape that law. So later
Mm.
on, it was SB, several Senate bills passed later on defining the law, making it more precise. But let's take a look at it. You were absolutely right. You mentioned that there was in the law, it gave a list of all the illnesses which cannabis could use to provide relief. So
Mhm.
it would say anorexia, AIDS, cancer, glaucoma, spasticity, which is like epilepsy when your muscles spasm,
Yeah.
and here's the part that you were mentioning, or any other illness which cannabis provides relief. So
That's brilliant. Because
yes.
a doctor can take that and say, hey, it works. It works for this patient, and this law allows it.
So and now that what all the other illnesses that it provides relief that weren't listed, which is appetite suppressants, insomnia, boom boom, all those other illnesses which cannabis provides relief weren't listed. But now by saying or any other illness which provides relief, then you just open up the pharmacopoeia,
Mm.
all
Mm.
all the diseases that can apply now. So
Mm.
a lot of state legislators, attorneys didn't like that in that part of the law. People try to remove it, and it was unsuccessful. So it
But
passed.
what that part of the law says is that it should be up to the doctor to decide. If you have a
Exactly.
qualified doctor, then it's between the patient and the doctor. There's nothing else to talk about.
Exactly. Your relationship with your doctor it has to be bona fide, and it's a private relationship.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
in fact, your health records are under HIPAA. In the United States, it's
Yeah.
called HIPAA. Under HIPAA protection, it means it's your personal information. It shouldn't be made public.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that takes me back to a few advances that happened later. So even though by 2002 everybody got shut down,
Mm.
then it became a game, Elver. It became a game of opening up clubs faster than they can shut them down. So it was like the government was taking a hammer, going, boom, you're shut down, you shut down, you shut down. But for every one they shut down, two would spring up. So it was boom. I remember when we got shut down, I remember there was two of them, ACO and the Marin Alliance opened up. So two other clubs opened up when I got shut down. So I was like, whoa, this is going to be, now we're two in this county instead of one. And then
How did you get
two,
shut on? I mean, did you get arrested or something?
no, they absolutely. They came in with their papers and a warrant, and
Right.
they arrested some of us. I was actually late that morning, so I wasn't arrested.
Hmm.
But I arrived around 9 o'clock in the morning, and they had been there at 6 in the morning. So they had been in our offices, or our premises, and our facilities, the greenhouses, etc. They had been there way early, like 5:45. They woke people up with machine guns, etc. And I showed up at the office. I had to deliver something that morning. So I had to drive to San Francisco, and then I had to drive all of 1 hour. So that set me back about an hour and a half. So when I showed up an hour and a half later, I saw the police cars and the commotion outside of the facility. I made a call first of what's going on before I walked in. I'm like, what's going on? So no, it was very, very eventful, very eventful. It was quite a show.
Was this around the same time that you smoked your first cannabis, or?
No, that was about 4 years later. So this is in 2002. So
Okay.
in 2002, there was a hard reset. All the clubs in America, or all the people who even were thinking about it, got smashed.
So you want to talk about your first time?
Yeah, sure. It was in the late 90s, 96, 97. Lots of laughter. I remember my stomach was hurting from the laughter. I couldn't, when you first, as you know, when you first try it, you're not as
Yeah.
aggressive. You're not as aggressive in suppressing the laughter. You know what I mean?
It's good to laugh, man. There's nothing to suppress that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely no. So like they say, a lot of the old timers would say, "Hey, Carlos, listen, it makes you laugh, it makes you cry, and then it makes you go to sleep." You laugh, you cry, and you go to sleep. Um, so no, I do remember that. It was in the summertime, long days, beautiful summer days with long daylight hours. Um, yeah, no, it was quite something for me. One of the things that you have to understand, back to that era. So one of the reasons why the miracle happened, why in the vote, the real question that journalists should be asking is, why did it pass? Is it just because people were just liberal? No, because again, think of your environment. Remember, we talked about AIDS. We talked about how we were just burying all these people, the gay community. And then also in the early 90s, from 89 through 92, 93, so 3 years before the law passed, you got to understand, crack was already in the scenes in the 80s with the black community. And then methamphetamines, meth. Methamphetamine?
Yeah.
Methamphetamines kicked in 91, which makes cannabis look like candy compared to
Right.
these other drugs. And so not just methamphetamines, but all the derivatives of methamphetamines.
Right.
So you had MDMA, MDA, MDMA and MDA, methyl deoxyamphetamine, and methyl deoxymethamphetamine. So all these other drugs were kicking in. So cannabis became the anti-drug. You see what I'm saying?
Oh.
Before it was the drug, or the drug. What do they call it? The gateway drug. It was like the drug that you would consume to try other harder drugs.
Right.
But in reality, what was happening was that by the mid 90s, people who were doing these harder drugs, even alcoholics, were using cannabis to come off their other drug.
Oh.
When they needed to wind down and sleep and eat and just chill out and relax, cannabis became the anti-drug. It became the antidote. It became the antidote to real drugs. You see what happened? So in the perception of everybody's mind, it went from being the gateway to like the solution to the drug problem. If you were a heroin addict, cannabis would help you. If you were an alcoholic, like with remember the singer, the American singer, the country singer who's always been pro. There's always Woody Harrelson was one of them.
Johnny Cash, you mean?
No, after Johnny Cash. He was also in favor of it. He says that he uses it because it helped him get off his alcohol. So it's either drink alcohol and become an alcoholic, or just puff once or twice or three times a week to get rid of the cravings for alcohol.
Does it work like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Ah.
So so it became the anti-drug. It became the antidote to all the other drugs. So you have the AIDS movement. You have bigger and worse drugs taking over the scene, and so cannabis became like the organic herbal remedy. You know what I mean? It became, which is what it is. It's a plant. So, and then people started realizing, well, why are we making a plant illegal? That's like, isn't God created all the plants? Why are we making it illegal? There's a whole spiritual aspect behind that. So that was really what started the movement. It was AIDS. It was the harsher drugs coming into the scene. It was compassion. People were good families their children were getting in trouble for something they shouldn't get in trouble for. They were ruining their scholarships. They were ruining their future careers and future employment opportunities. So it was time for a change, man. It was time for a change. So, and it had been promised in the 70s. With Jimmy Carter promised to legalize it in the 70s. So
this was like late 90s or 90s. So
October. The law passed in effect November 1996 when the law passed.
I mean, you're describing a situation where cannabis seemed like the miracle cure. Is it still like nothing has changed? We have learned no bad lessons from it, or it's still working.
It is among the safest. That's another reason why. That's another reason why. Also, people were like, some doctors were like, "I'm going to prescribe it to you because I know you can't get hurt," because it has an unusual safety record.
Right.
For altering your consciousness, it has a very, very unusual means not usual safety record.
Yep.
And so that's another thing that kind of backed it up. People were getting on television saying, "Name me one person that died from it." And people were like, "Well, no, it was this person drove and got into a car accident." The car accident killed him. The car accident killed him. Or, oh, my uncle went up the stairs and he was super, super high and he fell off the stairs and he broke his back. Okay, no. Okay, the stairs and the fall killed him or hurt his back.
That's exactly where the level of our journalism is today in Estonia.
Oh, yeah. See, that's so it's, and then by the 2000s, I was seeing doctors smoking. I was seeing attorneys were coming into our club, doctors, artists. We had one particular customer. He was a very well-known patient. His name was Dylan Katz. Young guy, maybe in his early 20s when I met him. He was his case was known everywhere on CNN. I bet you if you YouTube Dylan Katz.
I think I've even heard the name before.
Katz. Yeah.
Right.
He was a victim of gang violence. Completely innocent. Completely innocent. He was a white guy that was walking in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, and he was wearing the wrong colored jacket.
Oh. Okay.
His case made it all over the States. It was all over CNN. And he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, wearing the wrong color. So when the opposing gang saw him wearing the red, they're like, "Who are you?" Whatever. To make a long story short, they literally jumped on him. They beat him up, and they were jumping on his chest, stepping on his face, and he ended up getting brain damage. And when he walked around like this. Twisted, and it was a very sad case for him. Anyway, when he came to our facility,
right?
Because he was in Santa Rosa, he was only a half an hour from us. So he had heard of us, and he said, "Okay, maybe I'll go down there. Maybe they'll be kind to me. Maybe they'll give me a good price on cannabis, or maybe." So, in fact, some of the federal patients. The government had seven federal patients in the 70s. They came to us too. So even though they were getting cannabis from the government, they still came to us because the stuff that we're getting from the government was very low quality. Lots of seeds, lots of twigs, lots of leaves.
That's grown by the NIDA, right?
Yeah. At the Mississippi, University of Mississippi, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, University of Mississippi is growing, and it's basically seeds, and I've seen it in my hand. I've had it in my hands. They give them a jar, aluminum jar with a lid on it, with like 80 pre-rolled joints. And when you open the joint, it's sticks and seeds and twigs and horrible.
Nobody wants to smoke seeds.
No, no, exactly. So, but anyway, Dylan came to our club, to our facility, and he came in. He was being helped, and he walked in like this, and Robert right away. The Steve recognized him. Hey, you're the guy from the TV. Okay. So then they brought over a vaporizer to him, and as he was doing this, he was vaporizing, and then all of a sudden he's doing this, and now he's just moving a little bit. Now he's just doing this, and then 5 minutes later he's doing this.
Okay,
And
that's a
it
big
was
difference.
big difference, dude. Big. So
Yeah.
in our case, we actually had him as part of our case to prove that there was medical use to cannabis, because
Okay.
the federal law says that there was no medical use at all. And I said, look, well, here it is, clear. It's clear evidence that there's use.
I gotta ask this question. Did he ever find any other kind of medicine that would work as well?
Yeah, so that was another thing that was happening. I saw that whole transition happen. There were some doctors that were very liberal that were like, oh, I'll give you a prescription because I know you can't get hurt.
Right.
And there were other doctors and other clubs that would only look at you if you were terminally ill.
Okay.
So if you had insomnia or you had, they don't care. You can't be part of that club. If you had cancer, if you had AIDS, and you knew that you were going to die in the next 5-6 months, a year, then they will allow you in the club. So that was a club, and that was another great club called the Santa Cruz Compassionate Club. It was run by Valerie and her husband Corral. They're angel people. These people are angels. Their son was treated. Their son, I believe, had epilepsy, and this helped their son. And then they opened up a club for terminally ill patients. So basically, Valerie and her husband basically had a club that dealt only terminal illnesses, which means that everybody that they only met for a few months because they were at the end of life. So she took care of you with medicine, and she actually take care of you in your last moments of life, which was, that's just angelic. That's God's work. That is totally God's work. And that is why I was convinced. I come from a conservative side of the family, right? My family was very so that's when I became convinced that we weren't just being progressives and changing laws, that we were literally doing God's work. We were doing the Lord's work, because you can see with your hands, and without being a doctor, you can see the benefits in front of you, instant. And so, that's where it all started, really. Nowadays, people have gone over the fact that, yeah, it's medicinal, and now they just go ahead and legalize it for recreational use because of that unusual safety record that I was telling you about.
You never had that period in your like teenage years when you were rebelling against your let's say religious upbringing or anything like that, or?
No, I don't.
What's your spiritual journey, if I may ask?
I'm Christian for sure. I'm Christian. I was actually a missionary too, and for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I was a missionary for 2 years.
Before or after your cannabis?
No, from 19 to 21, and so that was before. So I graduated from high school, then became a missionary.
Where were you?
I was sent to Mexico.
Oh.
In fact, I have a home there where I was sent. So I came back 20 years later, and I built my home there. So yeah,
this was like a natural continuation of your missionary duties, basically.
Exactly. That's why everyone was saying, I say, this guy doesn't even smoke. What is he doing here? And he's conservative. What is he doing here?
Right, exactly.
But I was like, no, this is God's work. And there was something, what really irritated me was not the drugs or this and that. What irritated me personally was making a plant illegal. Once remember I told you I made a clone that one day, and
right.
I was so happy. I was walking around like I was showing everybody, look everybody, look at me. I was so excited. I've always been an avid gardener, so I've always loved plants. For me, what irritated me was when they said it was illegal. Then I associated, okay, marijuana is this plant, okay, and it's illegal. And I was like, it made no sense to me. I was like, why is this illegal? It's a plant. Why is it illegal? And then you have the drug wars, and when you make things illegal, the prices go up, and then you have now you bring in criminality, violence, because prices
Right.
go up, and it's like,
Right.
it made no sense. The whole thing made no sense to me, man. It made no sense. So for me, yeah, you're right. I came from a religious, conservative angle in the middle of this environment that I've told you about, AIDS and the harsher drugs and this and stuff. So yeah, that was the environment. That's why everybody voted yes, because you had to be a jerk to vote no. you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they were signing in front of Costco's, in front of when there was young people there, they say, "Hey, would you like to sign the petition to pass this law?" I said, "Absolutely." At the same time, I was already working with Robert, so it was a really fast wake up call, really fast, because here I am working with Robert. I discovered the plants in the backyard. I discovered that it's just a plant. I see the miracles happening all around me. I see how cool it is. I see how fun it is. And then I go one summer day. I go to the store, and there's a person there, sitting in front of the store collecting signatures for the law. So it was logical for me. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, where do I sign? So I signed up, I put my name, my address, and everybody did that. It was a big push. So the first push was 91. That's where everybody started asking, where did the term 420 come from? Right around 91.
Okay.
And then by 96, 97, we already knew where it came from, and the law had passed by 96, by November, October 96.
When did 420, like the symbol, become a part of like global culture, like
Okay.
bigger American culture?
Good. In the late 90s. So what had happened was, once the term 420 became big in the Bay Area, all of the bong shops and smoke shops, they call them head shops, all of the bong shops and smoke shops started making stickers that said 420, happy 420, etc. So once the stickers were made in the late 90s and people were putting them in their car, and they were still kind of a secret code. It wasn't still super known until it hit Hollywood. Because
Oh,
remember, Los Angeles is only 6 hours from San Francisco driving,
right.
1 hour flight. Once the bong shops and the smoke shops and the head shops in Los Angeles carried the sticker, then it hit the movies. Remember Encino Man? Encino Man?
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, Encino Man. I'll tell you the cast. So Encino Man came out in, I'll tell you right now.
Wait, was this like
Encino.
the frozen Iceman that came back to life or
Yeah,
something?
that's correct. That's correct. That's
Ah,
Brendan Fraser and Pauly
yes.
Shore. That, remember where he says sticky purple punch? There's always a sticky purple punch,
Oh,
right around that time. And that movie came out in 1992.
I
So
think it was. What year was it? 90?
1992. Remember I told you there was a big push in 1991?
Right.
So 1991 was a big push, and then the final push was 1995. So in those 4 years, it was just like ramping of people spreading the word and flyers everywhere. Every college students talking to other college students.
I think I saw that movie once in 90s when I was a teenager or something.
Yeah, so in those movies, in the Hollywood movies, in the comedy movies, that's when the term started saying 420. Also, in 1996 was the sixth annual. Oh, wrong. Ninth annual. In 1996 was the ninth annual Cannabis Cup in
Hmm.
Holland. Guess where most of the judges came from?
California?
New York and California. So, and in fact, I was one of them.
Oh,
So, yeah, I was a judge in 1996 at the ninth annual, and I was a judge in 2002 at the 13th annual. So
s-
when you start exporting Californians to Holland, to the epicenter of the European movement, and then they
right.
start using the term 420, then from there on it just became global.
Yeah, yeah, it's global now.
By 97, 98, it was global.
It's it's an interesting experience to be at the birth of something that becomes a global phenomenon.
It is. It's funny, yeah. And I knew it was going to be big. By 2000, and by 96, I didn't think it was going to be that big. I mean, I was still in shock to discover stuff. I was still learning. But by 2001, right around 9/11, then I realized that this was a big giant tsunami wave that was just going to go across the country. Yeah.
Since you were a judge at these cannabis competitions, what makes good cannabis? like how would you describe the ideal process from, let's say, from harvest to smoking for great cannabis?
Yeah. Okay, so as you know, there's three varieties, three general varieties. There's the sativa, which is mostly that gives you an up high. It gives you a talkative, productive, moving around, thinking, creative high. And then
Mm.
there's the indicas, which are more like couch lock. I want to sleep. I want to listen to some music. I want to put on some headphones. I don't want to do anything. I want to stay on my couch or go to bed, lay down. And then there's the ruderalis. Ruderalis actually comes from, it's the landrace stuff type. And there's
Mm.
one particular type of, I'm going to share this. It's not quite of what this theme of this show is, but I'm going to share it with you because it has something to do with Finland. So
Okay.
a lot of the outer flowers, auto flowers, a lot of the varieties that will flower automatically, regardless of the photo period, regardless of how much light you give them or how little light you give them. They're called autoflowers, and
Mm.
they're basically photo period independent. They don't
Mm.
depend on the period. Those are strains that are crossed with the Finola, the Finnish strain. So
Mm.
In Finland and in Estonia, there's a very short, stout plant, very short one, a type of ruderalis that grows in Estonia, it can't be, and it grows in Finland. And because there's very little light difference in the summertime, the days are really long.
Mm.
It'll flower indifferently. It doesn't need 12 hours of darkness. So all those strains, the autoflower strain that came later, actually are all crossed with the Finola, with the Finnish ruderalis strain.
Mm.
So what starts with, to answer your question, what makes a good cannabis? If you have the right type for your illness or for your benefit that will benefit you. Some need to get up and move. Some people are handicapped; they're in wheelchairs, or
Mm.
they're on crutches, and they need to walk around on a stroller or something. For those people, you want to give them the up stuff, so it
Right.
gets them out of bed.
Right.
If they're depressed, it gets them out of bed, socializing, talking, and it gets them moving.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, and for other people who need to come down, they need to be regulated too, so they can get some rest, so they can get some. Then you do the indica. So the first is to be able to use what you need. Use the type that you need. That's the first thing I recommend. The second thing I recommend is I actually believe, this is crazy. This is my myth,
Mm.
and I recognize it's a myth, but it has some truth to it. The cultivator, his energy goes into that plant. I know you're going to think I'm crazy. I know you're going to think I'm
No, it
crazy.
makes sense. It makes sense.
But back in the day when there weren't any clubs and you had to rely on friends and different friend cultivators, I can pick out Tony's energy. I can pick out Michael's energy. I can get John. If John was a jerk, I can get his energy from his plant. Like this plant would be not so great. Even if you grew your own, if you were having a bad relationship with your wife, or if you had problems at home, your plants reflected that. Your plants like absorbed whatever energy that you had. So I do believe that know your source. It better be, I didn't say must. I don't need to use the word must, but it better be fungicide free,
Mm.
pesticide free, heavy metals, so no harsh fertilizers or crazy fertilizers. You can
Mm.
use synthetic fertilizers. That's okay. Those are hydroponic fertilizers, but you
Mm.
can't use too much ureas and urea based fertilizers. Don't use those, or fertilizers that are
What,
harsh.
what what's your opinion on adding honey to the watering?
So that usually the sugars, any kind of sugar that
Not
you
any kind. I mean, honey is supposed to have like monosaccharides, which are simply absorbed by the
yeah.
plant.
Yeah, so there are sugars. All those are carbohydrates, and there are some plant sugars, and then there are some non-plant sugars. So
Right.
like arbanose is a plant sugar. All the nose, in fact, cellulose is a fiber. That's also a sugar. It's just a sugar
Really?
made into a fiber. Yes, all the cellulose, fructose,
Oh.
glucose, arbanose, all of those are actually polysaccharides. They're sugars. They're chains of carbohydrate chains. And So adding any kind of sugar to soil will increase the biology. That's an indirect way
Mm.
of stimulating the microorganisms in the soil.
Oh.
In reality, though, sugar is not uptaken by the roots. If I put sugar into my solution, the sugar is not uptaken by roots.
Have you ever measured like the Brix levels?
Yeah. So a healthy plant that will reach its genetic potential, its Brix. So different fruits and plants will have different Brix levels,
Right.
but that's genetic. So even with pineapple, for instance, most pineapples, as you know, are tart. They're sour, and you have the white pineapple from Hawaii, the honey white pineapple. That one's like twice the Brix level as a regular pineapple that you buy at your store. And so yeah, different varieties will have different Brix levels.
Have you tried testing the Brix levels in cannabis plants before and after watering with honey water?
Um, we used to spray. We used to spray the sugars. I'm thinking of what's the name of that? Carbo load. Carbo load. This would be a product from Advanced Nutrients.
Okay.
That had all the sugars and some finer sugars that the plants could uptake.
Okay.
It was kind of expensive, but yes, it was called Carbo Load. And then there's another company, Canadian companies came out with a similar product too.
I mean,
I did testing. I did testing for leaves, for tissue testing for health. Where you determine how much for nutrient. Basically, what we were doing there was testing for nutrient deficiencies. We weren't testing for sugar. We
okay.
weren't testing for
Okay.
sugar. No, we weren't testing. I did have my Brix meter. Where the flap, you put a flap over, you put a drop of the
Right.
liquid, you put a flap,
Right.
and it tells you how much your solution has. But we never tested for sugar for leaves. We always tested. We tested the leaves to determine if there was what was the deficiency.
I've been thinking about this because we are running out of fertilizer in the world, and so we need to get better at growing plants. And if the Brix level in the leaves gets above, I think it's 12, then there are some insects which cannot drink that juice from the leaf because it's got too much sugar. It will dehydrate them from internally. So. Would it not make sense to try and increase the Brix level in all sorts of leaves just to make them more resistant to pests?
It always is. It always is. In fact, the health of a plant, if you provide the plant the ingredients that it needs, it will produce. Plants produce their own food. They produce their own sugars. You don't need
Right.
to supplement sugars. You
Mm.
don't. That's where the microbiology in the soil. You're helping them out, which will in turn
Right.
help you get. They break down things so that your plants can consume them inorganically. So you got to understand something. Plants don't eat organic substances. They absorb inorganic substances. They only absorb
Mm.
inorganic salts and ions. Like when you take table salt, sodium chloride, it's a physical crystal. When you dissolve it in water, you get one ion of chloride, one ion of sodium.
Okay,
Right?
but let's think about this.
That can be absorbed, but plants do not absorb. Plants don't eat organic compounds. They do not absorb them.
Okay, but if we could find like one molecule that's like sugar-like and would be uptaken by the plant and would raise the Brix level, like let's say artificially, and make the plant more resistant to
That
pests,
would be fabulous.
could we try and find something like that?
That would be fabulous. Generally, your Brix level of your plant is determined genetically. So you want to
Right.
optimize the nutrients so that your plant generates its genetic potential, so that your
Right.
plant reaches its genetic potential. Everything's already written down genetically. Remember that. So if this plant has a genetic potential that's higher than this one, then providing the nutrients for it to reach its genetic potential, that's what you would want.
Mm.
I have seen even like ATP. I have seen the precursors
Oh
to
wow.
ATP. Yes, I have. Very expensive. That was cultivars for wineries. They have this very little bottle with like very expensive precursors to the ATP so that it'll be faster. And so, I'm not, it's going to cost more than the plant. I'm not sure and in terms of fertilizers, you don't need
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can get Carlos back. It seems that he dropped offline. If he's back. Very nice. Okay, let's start to stream.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I pressed the wrong button.
Yeah.
So cannabis is a very fast-growing plant. It requires lots of nutrients. It's a fast-growing annual plant. And but I think that if you give it what it needs, it'll reach its genetic potential. I'm not sure you need steroids to win an Olympic. I'm not sure you need that. If you just buy what it needs, it will reach its genetic potential.
Have you ever considered like breeding some special variety of cannabis just for yourself that would be like optimally for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So over the years, like I remember, I mentioned my friend Tony, who was one of my early friends that was cultivating. He had a particular strain that he liked for his benefit, for his relief, which I think was White Widow. Come to think about it, I remember. And White Widow was a hit everywhere. Everyone loved White Widow
Yeah,
because it was very strong and you very couch lock. It
exactly.
locked
Yeah.
it locked you in your couch. Or also had pain killing abilities too. So everyone would pick their flavor. I remember I can rattle off names from the 90s and early 2000s, different Romulan and Trainwreck and all these flavors that don't even exist anymore today. Or today there's some derivatives of them. Um, yeah, and I saw a lot of variety early on. I'm more in engineering now in lighting. I'm more of in the last 20 years. But early on, when I worked at that club, I did see a lot of interesting. I saw strains that were smelled like blueberry, and I would even tell the grower, "How did you get the blueberry smell into the plant? Like, how did you match?" And he didn't. That plant just genetically produced the same kind of terpenes and polyflavonoids and that you get from. So I saw a lot of variety, and I was afraid that so the variety increased as the movement as the movement got together, and the variety the the movement got bigger and bigger. I saw more varieties. I saw people from Afghanistan come back from Afghanistan, from India with their own seeds. I saw purples and greens and pinks and
Oh.
all kinds of different over time. And then by 2010 or so, by 2010, once all the recreational clubs started popping out in Colorado and in California first, then it was like dominant strains started ruling. We're like five or six were everywhere. Remember the OG Kush
Oh yeah.
and remember that, yeah, and those were everywhere. There was a Girl Scout cookies, and then it was so
Classic.
yeah, so you had that the purple Urkel, all the purple varieties. All the rap songs started talking about all the rappers started making all the perps and smoking the perps and doing the perps and growing the perps. And so the purple varieties became very popular, even though they were usually very weak. The purple varieties were very the Kush varieties were not so there,
By the
but
way, is it
the
true that
looks.
you is it true that you can make most plants purple by just adding like really cold water or ice water?
No, cold, yes. So
Oh,
some varieties, for instance, if I go to Colombia and come back with a sativa from Colombia and grow it here in Northern California,
right.
if I grow it here and that here it gets cold in the September, October, November, the cold temperatures at night will make the plant purple. The
But
purple pigment, just like the leaves in your trees in the fall in Estonia. What
they
happens
change
right?
color.
They change color from green to what? Orange, purple,
Yeah,
yellow. Yeah,
yeah.
same thing. They're the chromatids, in the plant. Um, there's a compound, the chromo, means color, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
with temperature, it's temperature sensitive. So you can't, but if a plant is not genetically propense to be purple, then it won't, or it might get a little purple. It might get some edges of purple from the cold. But if it has a lot of propensity to be purple, then yeah, you bring on the temperatures, it's going to get even more purple. It'll be violet, purple violet for sure.
When just the edges get purple, then it looks really trippy.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, there was no medical value to the color of the. There was no medical. But all the rappers made it so popular, so then before you know it, it was everybody was growing purple. Just because, you know, the purple Urkel and the grape ape was another flavor back in the time. The grape ape was super popular.
What's the favorite plant that you have ever grown?
For me, it was a train wreck, and I actually have a
Why?
personal. It had a perfect balance of body and head effect.
Oh,
A perfect balance for me. If you vaporize or consume cannabis, one particular strain all the time, generally, right? I'm using the word generally. Generally, you can burn out after a month or two. It might not give you the same effect anymore
it
as it
gets
did
old.
a month
Yeah,
ago. You may actually get sick. You're like, this is not working for me anymore. You actually like not a tolerance, but like a
doesn't give the same benefits anymore.
it just wears you out. It's like
That's
having this.
true as well. Yeah.
It's almost like having the same food every day. After the, you know, I love macaroni and cheese, but if you give it to me for 7 days, I'm going to throw up by day eight. You know, I'll throw up. So you burn out. Other ones give you headaches. They start giving you a little bit side effects and stuff. But there's that one particular. Actually, for me, there's two. It would be
Okay.
Trainwreck and one called Warlock that's produced by Magus Genetics in Holland. Those two I can do for a year, and it's always the same effect. It's always the same consequence. It's always the same relief. So
Do you have any hypothesis about why that is? What are the
yeah,
specific chemicals?
so there
Have you
are
measured or
remember there are terpenes. There are
right?
polyflavonoids, and then there are also ratios of CBD to THC and
Yeah.
CBN. So all the different ratios plus the terpenes. The terpenes make your high go a certain direction. They can make the high go this way, that way, or that way. So that combination of you know THC, CBG, all those cannabinoids, the right combination can be. But it's always good, like it's to switch it up. It's always good to. It's never good to have one. And it's also I never believed in isolating one compound because when you have a plant, you are consuming holistically the whole thing. You're getting a profile of many active compounds, not just one. It's not just THC or it's not just CBD. Okay, you're getting a plethora, a composition of many, the synergy of many working together. And whenever you step away from the plant at every level, it becomes more toxic and it becomes more potent. So there's a difference between toxicity and potency, very different. So potency is how strong a drug is, and toxic is how strong a drug is before it kills you.
Okay.
How
What?
soon at what level it becomes deadly.
How do you mean? Like, can cannabis get toxic or what do you mean?
Yeah. So here, let me explain. So take the opium poppy. You know the poppy.
Right.
Okay, it's a flower, right?
Right. I've seen it. It
Okay.
grows around here.
Okay, good. Yeah, it grows. Yeah, it's parks. It grows in parks here too, and it's technically legal. Um,
Uh, uh, your picture just froze. Can you still hear me? Uh, okay, I think we lost Carlos again. um, Gotta write to him. Okay, let's see if we can get him back. I guess we are not getting him back. Well, if you liked it so far, this is our social media where we should post more often than we do. But please like, share and subscribe. And I think Carlos is... Carlos is back.
Am I back again? Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're back again.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
I stepped out of the room, so I'm a little closer to the server now. So let me explain. When you have a plant, you have a synergy of many active compounds. Okay, lots of individual chemicals. Okay, and they work together synergistically. It's a holistic approach. Modern medication, modern drugs doesn't work that way. They take only one compound, one active compound, and then they concentrate it, or they manipulate it, or they make it more powerful. Let me step back to the example I was giving you in there.
Mm-hmm.
You have the opium poppy. Okay, you scrape it, a juice comes out of it. You dry it. What's that juice called? It's called opium. Okay. Now, opium is a painkiller, and it is this effective, and it is this addictive. Okay? You take opium and you take it one step away from the plant. In other words, you freebase it, or you isolate the compound, the active compound on it. And you take it one step away. So here's the plant, here's the opium poppy, right? And then here is opium. If you take the opium and you isolate the active compound, now you get morphine. And morphine is this much more pain-killing effect and this much more addictive.
More purer.
Okay? Yes, and more pure, right? It's isolation. Then you take the morphine, right? Which is opiate. You have opium, and then you take the morphine. You take the morphine, and you take it one more step away from the plant. One more freebase, one more isolation. And now you have heroin, which is this pain-killing and this addictive. So toxicity and potency keep going up the more you isolate it.
Ultimately, you're gonna get to fentanyl and all those derivatives.
Exactly. So that's where now fentanyl is a synthetic compound based on the heroin. You see, it's killing people instantly. I mean, people are dropping like flies right now all over the world with fentanyl.
I hear it's a huge problem in USA and also in Estonia, actually.
Everywhere
already.
Even the people who manufacture it in China and in Latin America, they're dying too.
There was a time, like several years ago, when it felt like Estonia was the only country having a fentanyl problem. And then I heard something about it happening in Canada, then it started happening in USA. Where does it come from? Is it from China or is it from...
Yes, it's a pin drop. One pin drop can kill someone. So it's very, remember we talked about potency and toxicity. It is very, very potent and is very, 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 very toxic.
Right.
So again, back to I don't want to talk about drugs right now. I want to talk about what related to what you were saying. So you can't take cannabis and take one active compound and then multiply it, freebase it, concentrate it, and then call that it won't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It's a synergy. It's a balance of many things. Okay?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you working out every day at the gym, but you don't eat enough, or you don't get enough sleep. You're going to be a sick person, dude. I don't care. Or let's say you go to the gym every day and you work out every day at the gym, but you eat nothing but pizza and soda. It's not gonna. It's a synergy, man.
I think there are like dozens of cannabinoids, and we don't know what most of them actually do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
CBG, for instance, right now is going on. CBG is a miracle. CBG is what's taking care of cancer. I got a buddy who's got cancer here. CBG is taking care of him. He went from day and night. He went from not being able to eat and for sure death to being able to eat, sustaining, keeping his weight. CBG, big time for him, for his disease at that time. You see what I mean? It's the person with the specific disease or specific diagnosis at that particular time. So the farther you step away from the natural source, the more concentrated, like you said, the more free base it is, the more isolated the compounds are, and the more dangerous they become. They become very potent, but they become very dangerous, very toxic. So that's my lesson for now. But let's see how we're doing with time. I think we're done with time, bud. I think we're done, dude.
Dude, just to end the show, how are you celebrating 420?
Well, we actually this morning, I walked into the office, everyone said happy 420. and I just said happy 420. I'm getting ready to leave the country tomorrow morning, so I'm pretty busy. I won't be celebrating tonight. I won't be drinking. I won't be going out. I don't, you know, I'm almost 50. So, you know, if I was in my 20s, that'd be a different story. Then maybe we would go out to a park right now or something, but go hang out, enjoy the spring sun.
How old are you?
I'm 49.
No way. You look like 35 maximum, I would say.
Oh, I love you, buddy. My wife's 25. My wife's half my age. She keeps me young.
Or it might be the cannabis, or it might be your. I mean, you have such a you're such a wonderful, loving human being. Actually,
Oh,
I mean,
that's so nice, Oliver. Thank you.
I think that's what's keeping you young. Actually, that's if I your story about how you got involved in all this. It was such a beautiful story, man.
It
The world
is. You
should
know
know it.
what? Totally. It was. It definitely is. I didn't come here for money. I didn't. It was kind of like it was. Like I said, it was God's work, and it really was. The law. It was like the government wasn't doing anything,
Yeah.
and yet I saw all this benefits were clear. The benefits were clear.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, you know, and I was getting paid for it. You know, I was getting paid $10 a page. So, so I just kept working, and then finally, I went from just being a regular employee there to being the one of the managers. And then from there, I kept growing and growing. And then, of course, that changed my degree. You know, I did engineering, but then I did a little bit. I took some ag engineering courses.
Oh,
So agricultural courses. You had to botany and food and fiber marketing, soil science, crop science. So then, and of course, because and even though I'm an engineer in manufacturing, I've always engineered and manufactured stuff for agriculture. So that automatically, in 20 years, that made me also an ag engineer because I had to go into greenhouses. You saw on my Facebook 2 days ago, I walked into a facility, a greenhouse, and I'm changing all their lights to LEDs and stuff. You saw that on my Facebook.
yeah.
So,
I think so.
so in a way, it's always been engineering and botany. You know, plants and factories. That's
And
been
not
pretty
only
much.
you also helped engineer the culture of the whole world towards more cannabis acceptance.
You know, I did. So when I went to when I spoke to Tartu, I met you through one of my events, right? One of the events.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you can consider me being a judge in Holland. Yeah, I participated in the propagation.
huge.
Yeah, that is huge. The propagation. When I did it, I wasn't expecting it. You know, I wasn't expecting that to be I was just doing it for fun. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't like
Yeah,
being
I
an
know.
activist. I wasn't being an activist, you know.
Yeah, but still, it changed the world.
It did,
Everything
it did.
contributed, like even in small parts. It contributed to this moment here. Like we talking about this here, and maybe this conversation will change the world somehow, or at least maybe it will provide some motivation and inspiration for Estonians. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
are you coming to Estonia anytime soon?
I would love to go there during the summertime. Of course, I would like to go there like July or August. It would be super nice. I miss taking the Tallink, the boat. I miss taking the boat into Tallinn. Back to activism. The only time I was really an activist, like gung ho, like risking my life in activism, was from the '96 through 2002. I needed to stand up for what was true, what was the truth, you know, what was right. Like I said, we were doing God's work, literally. I mean, that's what we were doing. After 2010, it became commercial and everything became legal, so that the risk was gone and stuff. And when you met me in Estonia, my message to the people of Estonia is this: you guys literally sang yourselves into freedom, literally through singing. Your revolution was not people killing each other on the streets. It wasn't you guys tearing down buildings or lighting the Supreme Court on fire or breaking into your Capitol buildings or screaming on the streets. No, you guys sang yourselves to independence. And I think that in collaboration with doctors and at a grassroots level, citizens and doctors, I believe that you guys can implement the law, implement just a practice, and then have the courts and have the law and have the Supreme Court in Tartu, have them hash out or clarify. You told me there's no memorandums, right? There's no public.
There's no democracy like that in Estonia.
Yeah. See, so in that case, you know what I would do? I would get a group of doctors and get a group of real serious patients that no one can deny that they're patients. I mean, they could be in wheelchairs. It could be, with their oxygen in their, et cetera. And get them on a cannabis program where a doctor's supervising their use. And even though it's illegal, and even though the Supreme Court and maybe even the Justice Department in Estonia might arrest the doctor or might arrest the patient or might threaten to pull the doctor's license from practicing medicine. Even though that's the case, if it hits the Supreme Court, if it hits your guys' court, it should just be appealed. If it hits the Supreme Court, then maybe the Supreme Court in Estonia will be the one to be like, this is nonsense. We have to change this. This is completely stupid. We can't put these people in jail.
Right.
And then maybe the Supreme Court, it will be through the judicial branch, not through the executive or through the legislative, but through maybe the judicial branch, which is generally they're the most liberal too. They're the most compassionate, the most liberal. Maybe they're like, that's it. We'll make a precedent. No one goes to jail if you're ill and you're smoking cannabis, and that's the beginning.
Yeah.
That would be, I don't know. I'm assuming your next door neighbor has a crocodile and crazy drugs. Deforms you and causes, kills people left and right. So I don't know. My suggestion, you guys are very kind, beautiful, Viking descent, German descent, rational. You guys are very, very cool. You guys are very, very intellectual kind. I've been to your university. I've heard you guys. I've heard how you guys think. I've heard you guys thinking between each other. You guys are very open, honest. I believe that someone should start getting a group of doctors and getting a group of patients and then combining them and starting to implement it with or without the law behind your back. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it'll go to the Supreme Court, and then maybe the Supreme Court will see the light.
I actually very much agree with you that the best bet would be the judicial branch, and going to the Supreme Court with anything cannabis related. It might work. There's a very good chance it might work. Politics is not going to save us.
Yeah, no politician wants to take the cannabis, logo, and be like, I'm the one that did it. Exactly. No, they're not. People are too shy still, and there's not also information. Getting these like this podcast, getting this podcast out. And other podcasts like it, and information, flyers to the students, etc. But I think it should just be implemented.
I don't want to keep any longer than you. Do you have any time constraints that I need to know about?
Yeah, I gotta get moving here. It's already. I leave in 20 minutes. So.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable 420 with us. Busy.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no problem, Elver. Thanks for having me over. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
In Estonia as well.
It would be fun. I need to be there. I haven't been there in quite a few years.
Come and visit me.
I haven't been there in 6 years.
It's time. It's after pandemic too. All right.
Yes.
See you.
All right, buddy. Thanks for having me over, man. Take care.
Thanks for coming.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.